coming up on this episode of the Moneypants Superpower Hour. Moneypants is a cash-based system, and it's that way for a very good reason. However, handing kids cash introduces certain problems that can turn into a headache. For example, what do you do if the cash your kids earned gets lost or stolen? What do you do if the money gets misspent or your kids lose track of what they spent their money on? And what if your kids start having fights with each other about money and business deals they make with each other? In this podcast, we're going to explain the 3 easy rules to follow to prevent these common cash problems. All this and more, but first, the joke of the day.
A new monk arrives at the monastery. He is assigned to help the other monks in copying the old texts by hand. He notices, however, that they are copying copies of the original books, so the new monk goes to the head monk to ask him about this, worried that there may be errors. The head monk says, "We have been copying from the copies for centuries, but you make a good point, my son. I will check." The old monk goes down into the cellar with one of the copies to check it against the original. Hours later, nobody has seen him. So one of the monks goes downstairs to look for him. He hears sobbing coming from the back of the cellar and finds the 75-year-old head monk leaning over one of the original books crying. He asks, "What's wrong?" "You idiots," the old monk says with anger and sadness in his eyes. "The word was celebrate." Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Moneypants Superpower Hour. We are your hosts, Hannah and Fontaine Judd, and we're the proud parents of 8 sons and 7 daughters, ranging in age from newborn to college student. We definitely know the difference between celebrate and celibate. We are both BYU graduates and the creators of Moneypants. Head on over to CaptainMoneyPants.com to learn more about what we do and what we're all about. We believe every person on this planet has been given at least one superpower to help them accomplish their unique mission in life, but the only way to unlock those superpowers is through work ethic. That's when greatness happens. And that's where Moneypants comes in. Moneypants is the complete tool set for cultivating work ethic in all aspects of a person's life. And today's topic is all about cash. And we've covered this topic before, but not quite in this way, because today we're going to be talking about overcoming the 5 hurdles of dealing with cash when implementing Moneypants. And I think I'll start it off by telling a quick story. I was talking to a lady the other day and I was explaining to her the Moneypants concept, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I love it. It's great because you're 100% right." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she says, "Well, I could never do it because I hate cash." I'm like, "Oh, well, what'd you do instead?" And she says, "Well, I tried all these other things. I tried digital money and fiat currency and blah, blah, blah." And she's like, "Nothing else worked, and so I finally just gave up." I'm like, "Oh, well, okay. Well, what happened?" And she's like, "Oh, well, to this day, my kids don't know how to handle money." I'm like, "Oh, well, that's not much of a success story." But I understand her frustration with dealing with cash. She doesn't want to deal with the hassle. And I admit there are a lot of potential pitfalls and problems that come with handling cash. And Hannah, you and I, we've been down that road.
Yeah, we've been handling cash for years, so we are well versed in all the pitfalls of dealing with cash, but we also are aware of all the benefits.
Right.
And the advantages of it. So we kind of want to take that head on and go, okay, so if you are dealing with cash, what do you need to look out for, and how do you handle and avoid the problems?
Well, and there are definitely pitfalls. There are definitely problems dealing with cash. And we broke it down basically to 5. Here are the 5 major hurdles when it comes to dealing with cash. And they are, and this is with regards to Moneypants. And I should clarify, Moneypants is a cash-based system. This is not by accident, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but Moneypants, we deal with cash. Our children deal with cash. The parents deal with cash. It's a cash-based system. And there's definitely a method to our madness. But the problem we'll run into, there are 5 of them when dealing with cash, and that is, number 1, lost money. Number 2, stolen money. Number 3, misappropriated or misspent money. Number 4, losing track of the money. And number 5, shady business deals when it comes to cash.
Yeah, and I like how you called these hurdles, because they're definitely hurdles that we can help you get over. They're not insurmountable problems.
Right.
So that's what we're going to talk about today.
So I think let's just go down the list. Number one was lost cash, and this is where someone has basically their money is missing, and you find a $5 bill on the ground, or there's a 50 cents somewhere, or you don't know who it belongs to. And here's the problem: is unless you write your name on your money, which you shouldn't,
which we've had kids do though,
you don't know who it belongs to because it's not assigned an owner. You can't identify who owns it. And so the easiest solution we came up with for this first problem is we recommend keeping all your cash in a family safe. And then each person has their expense, their money in a little, in our family, we just had it's in a plastic baggie.
A sandwich
Ziploc,
bag, a freezer
bag with their name on it. And so when you're going to head to the store to go buy something, we just have our kids go to the family safe and grab out their money bags. And that works pretty well. The caveat is you don't give toddlers cash. You have to, and we talked about this when it comes to the prize bag, where you want them to spend it right away. So you still want them to handle cash. You want them to get used to the idea of cash. So on payday, you hand them their $10, $15, $5, $30, whatever it is they earned, and then escort them promptly with cash in hand over to the prize bag and have them take that cash and hand it back in exchange for the toy or the bike or the clothing or whatever it is that they wanted from the prize bag.
So if they go shopping, like if any of the older kids are going shopping, we'll say, go get your money out of the safe, and they'll put it in their purse, wallet, whatever. They're like, oh, I don't want to spend more than $20, so they'll grab $20, put it in their wallet, and go off shopping. They typically don't take their whole bag with them because typically there will be like $300, $400 in their bag, because if they're saving up for dance classes or something like that, they'll just take their own money and go shopping. But for a toddler, you never want to do that. You never want to hand a toddler cash. They seriously will lose it within about 2 minutes, and that's it. So you might as well just flush money.
It's like magic.
Yeah,
where did it go?
You might as well flush money down the toilet as hand over cash to a toddler. At no point should you hand your toddler cash unless it's like, here's the money from your money bag. Hand it to the cashier. There you go.
And here's the part of the problem. Here's I guess the biggest problem with cash is that once it's gone or once it's lost, there's nothing you can do about it. You have no recourse. The only solution to when it comes to dealing with lost cash is to try to prevent the cash from being lost. And so when it comes to toddlers, just don't
hand.
when you hand it to them on payday, you promptly help them spend it. And if they're not going to spend it immediately on the prize bag, it should go right into their expense bag and put into the family safe. Basically, you're going to have a bank at home. That's the idea.
Now, this sounds super complicated, but if you have a filing cabinet that has a key, that's your bank.
Yep.
If you have a drawer in your desk that you can lock, that's the bank. So if you have a safe, that's great. Or if you want to go buy a thing and put a padlock on it, go to Walmart and buy something you can slip a padlock on, that's great. But, look around, see if there's something you have already around the house that can act as your family safe.
And the idea is, and we've had this problem too, where some of our kids will want to keep their money with them. And we strongly recommend against that, because the less cash you have floating around in the house, the easier it is to find the owner if cash is lost.
No, granted, you're talking to some people who have 8 sons and 7 daughters. And so as, we're talking a large number of people with, if everybody has their own little bit of cash and loses $1 here or $1 there, it turns into a mess. So
but let's say you only have 5 people.
So say you have 3 kids. We're just saying it's a lot easier if you do it this way. Yeah. It's easier. Yep. And it keeps things on the up and up. And
the only other thing I would add to that is that sock money is not a good idea. You're probably wondering, what in the world is that? Well, during the last year, our kids decided for some reason that a safe place to keep their money was their sock. And I don't know who came up with the idea. But
it happened on trips, family trips.
Is that where it came from?
Yes, that's where it came from. And I can't tell you how many kids have lost a fortune out of their socks. So just, I don't know.
What would happen though is there would be
it would be safer.
No, but there would be a sock and it would have a big bulge at the bottom. And I would wonder what that was. And it would rattle. And I'm like, there's money in there. And sure enough, it would be like they would have like 2 or 3 socks all packed into one. So they put their money, our kids would put their coins and their cash into one sock, wad it into a ball, and then put it inside of another sock. And they called it sock money. And I'm not, maybe that's like bra money for some people.
No. We're not going there.
Where it's just not a good idea. So avoid that. The best idea that we found is just have each kids have their own little, envelope or a freezer bag with their money in it and put it away when it's not in use.
Only use sock money in an emergency.
Okay, so that's number 1, how to deal with lost cash or the hurdle of lost cash. Number 2, this is a little more frustrating, but it's what to do with stolen cash. And this, unfortunately, is going to be a potential problem if you have multiple kids dealing with cash and the kids haven't quite learned the values of not stealing, haven't quite learned the ethics of cash and transactions and all that. And they're like, oh, finders, keepers, losers, weepers. That mentality, it's still prevalent amongst children. And so you need to deal with what do you do when it comes to cash that gets stolen or is supposedly stolen?
Maybe you're thinking, oh, yeah, you have kids that steal. Well, I don't know about you, but most people, if you ask them, hey, do you remember the day that you learned that you stole something and your mom or dad taught you that you shouldn't steal? Do you remember? Do you remember that? I mean, I remember my little brother coming out of the store and having gum in his mouth and going, wow, you got gum. And soon there was a whole chorus of kids, can we have gum? And then my parents perked up and went, wait a minute, where'd you get gum? And, he had to go back to the store and return it. And, everybody, you can usually remember incidents like that where he's an honest boy now, but he had to learn it at some point.
I think I stole, what were they called? The chocolate eggs with the gooey candy center. Not the Kinder, not the ones with the toy in the middle, but Cadbury eggs. Mm-hmm. I remember I think I stole one of those when I was like 5 or something. And I was eating it in the car and my mom noticed it. I don't remember buying you a Cadbury egg, and I had to go back to the store, and I think I apologized or my mom apologized, but I do remember having to go back into the store. That's the only part I remember.
Yeah. And I've taken kids back into the store, that sort of thing. So they're the learning experiences. At some point, your kids need to learn this, and so
why not now?
Yeah.
So when it comes to stolen cash, the easiest solution is to prevent it in the first place, and so you're teaching your kids these values, these morals. But a good way to catch it when it's still in its incipiency, when it's still easy to catch, is to hold payday on a regular basis. Regular payday, what you do is you have to reconcile their piggy bank totals and their piggy bank amounts with their cash.
So they take that bag of money that was in the safe and they have to count up how much money they have, tell you how much it is, and then you look and see if that's what the app says that they have.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, there's a problem. And if they have more cash than they should, than the app shows, well, that's usually a red flag. And so what happens is if you are able to determine, and we're not saying that all discrepancies are stealing, but usually there's a bit of fudging going on, and we're not about that, where we want to teach our children to be 100% honest, not 98, not 96, not 75%, 100%. And so if it's off and you go, well, why do you have more money than you should? Did you take somebody else's money? It's a great opportunity for discussion. but it's all there in kind of black and white where it shows that you should only have this amount, and you have more than that, there's a problem.
Yeah, and it gives that accountability when you have the payday where, okay, well, where'd your money go, or why do you have too much?
And the rule of thumb is if someone is in fact caught stealing, that first of all, they should have to return whatever they stole, whatever amount of cash they stole. But secondly, there should be a fee associated with it. So not only do they have to give back what they took, but they also need to pay some sort of fee. And we've talked about this in another podcast too, about crafting effective consequences, where maybe you can be creative in coming up with something, or it could just be a simple dishonesty fee right there in the app. Either way.
Yeah, like, for example, like once I had a child who was having a hard time with taking other people's things. And it was a problem. They knew it was a problem. And
they didn't like it.
And they didn't like it. And they're like, yeah, I have a problem with this. And so I said, okay, how are we going to overcome this problem that you're dealing with? And I said, well, how about this? If you take something that doesn't belong to you, what I'm going to have you do is you're going to pay the person for the thing, but I'm also going to have you go buy that thing for yourself.
With your money.
With your own money. So then, because that's what you should have done in the first place.
Right.
Is you should have gone and bought yourself, that sweater or that jewelry or that.
So they're going to actually model to themselves with proper behavior.
Yeah. And so then you're able to enjoy it and feel good about it and know, okay, no, that's the right thing to do.
And that's a good solution too. That's a really good solution.
So that was a helpful solution because, different people have different problems. Your kids are going to have different problems than what you had or dealt with.
So that's number 2, what to do with stolen cash. The real idea is just, hold payday, because that'll usually reveal any problems there. And that leads into the number 3 hurdle, which is if money is misspent or misappropriated. And what do we mean by that? It means the kids spent the money on something they shouldn't have. And here's the thing, Moneypants, you're going to be giving your kids a lot of money, potentially thousands of dollars to spend. And it could be, for football camp or for scouts or for school clothes or for trips or whatever, or presents or whatever it may be. And the kids, you expect them to spend the money appropriately, $400 or $500 on football. That's a lot of money. And if the kid goes, well, I don't want to play football, I'm just going to go blow this at the arcade. Well, that's a problem because that's not what you, the parent, were going to spend that money on. Therefore, your children should not be spending that money on that thing. Remember, the whole Moneypants concept, Hannah, is to take the money you were already spending on your children and have them earn some of it, And so if you were going to spend $500 on football, but instead you give your kid the chance to earn it, and then they go and blow it on something else, that's a problem. And that's the third hurdle is misspent or misappropriated cash. And
so like if my kids are like going to the store and they say, hey, we're going to bike over to the store and, I'm going to buy this tool or that. And I'm like, okay, first check the app. Show me like that you have fun money.
Right.
Like, where's that money
that's
coming
the first
from?
Thing. That's the very first thing.
And if they don't have any fun money, I'm like, nope, sorry, no can do. Or if they do have fun money, I'll say, oh, you have $15 of fun money. You can take $15 with you. And then when they come back, I say, hey, I expect you to enter it into the app, anything that you spend. And so on payday, you'll have the whole list of anything that they spent that week. And so it should be there. So,
and that's just talking about using non-fun money for fun, but it could also be, using, again, I'll go back to football, using football to buy clothing. Their football money to buy clothing. Also not okay. So the easiest solution for this problem of misspent money is to, once again, have payday every week. Because what will happen is the app will have you review the expenses that they made, and it'll also show you their piggy banks and you're going to make sure that their cash matches their individual piggy banks. Where, why are you spending money out of football? It says here you bought new shoes. Okay, that's not how it should be. So that all happens on payday, and it happens automatically. If they've spent any money, it'll automatically review, which is cool. And so it'll, if a kid has a skateboard, it'll show which piggy bank they used to buy it. And it shouldn't be coming from, maybe they do have a skateboard fund, but if it's coming out of, once again, football or scout camp or whatever, that's a no-no. But then another example, I guess, would be where a kid made an incorrect purchase. Where what do you do if your kid goes to the store and they come back and they're like, okay, well, I bought this thing, and you recognize, yeah, you weren't supposed to do that. What do you do? Well,
So, we've had that happen. So recently some of our kids went to the store, came back with a bunch of stuff. And I said, okay, did you enter it in? And I looked at him like, oh, you bought that with money that wasn't fun money. And so...
And it was definitely a fun money item.
Yeah. And so we said, okay, you need to get back on your bikes and you got to take the item back and return. So they had to bike all the way back to the store, stand in the return line, do the return, get the money back, put it back into their accounts, because that was, they weren't following their budget. Yeah. And so these are, now you're like, oh, well, that sounds like a hassle. No, these are important lessons to learn. Like
Life lessons.
You want them to learn these lessons now and get used to these ideas now, as opposed to making huge mistakes when they're adults. And so when people say, oh, I give my kids money and allowances because I want them to learn how to handle money, Moneypants actually does that, because they actually have a budget that they're supposed to stick to and follow. It's not as serious as the budgets that adults have to follow, but it's a budget.
It's a great primer.
And they have to follow it, and they have to learn to follow it. And this will prepare them for handling money responsibly as an adult.
So, but then the next question though would be, Hannah, what if you can't return it? Like, what if our kids had bought something, I don't know, like ice cream, and they weren't supposed to.
Yeah, they didn't have the money.
And they've already eaten it. You can't take it back because it's already gone. And so a couple of suggestions there is if your kids use the money to buy something they shouldn't be or shouldn't have, the easiest solution is to, a couple of solutions. One, have them do job jar or work outside the home until they replace the funds that they spent erroneously.
Yeah, and until that happens, though, all their money is
locked.
Is locked.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so they don't have access. Yeah, they don't have access to their money. Also, if let's say a girl, she bought herself a nice pair of shoes, and she was actually supposed to be saving up for ballet. She used her ballet class money to buy herself a pair of shoes that she wanted. Well, what you do is you take those shoes and say, "Oh, and we can't return them for whatever reason. It was a one-time deal or a garage sale.
They were on sale, non-returnable,
whatever." And so what you do is you say, okay, well, you weren't supposed to buy those, and you know that, and you took it out of your other piggy bank that was for ballet. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these shoes and we're going to put them up here in my closet, and you have a couple of options. You can do job jar until you've earned enough to pay for the shoes, to repay your ballet, or and then also you can't use these until that happens. So it's actually very simple, where give them the opportunity to do job jar to make it up, and they can't access the item or their money for that matter because they've been a little irresponsible. So they lose access to their money, but they also lose access to the thing that they bought they weren't supposed to. Okay, and then along these lines, though, I also wanted to talk briefly about we're not talking though about rescuing your kids from bad purchases, where just because, for instance, our kids have fun money, and maybe they're off. We had a son who went and bought himself he was really excited because he's into avionics and engineering and all these sorts of things. And he got himself a styrofoam plane glider thing at the store. And Hannah, you were there. Did you help him buy it?
I said, are you sure you want to spend $8 on this? This looks like it's just cheap styrofoam. It's just going to break. Are you sure you don't want to just make something yourself?
Or buy something a little higher quality.
Yeah.
But he was gung-ho. He was
like, no,
really
this is what I want. I want this. And he went ahead and bought it and played with it for a couple of days, and sure enough, bits and pieces of it started falling off. So then he had modified it and added stuff to it and taped it and
had a popsicle stick stuck in there to keep the nose from falling off.
Yeah, and after 2 weeks, he goes, it is a piece of junk. I want to take it back to the store and get something different. I'm like, you know what? No, you knew what you were buying when you bought it. You knew it was a piece of styrofoam.
I warned you at the time.
Yeah. You need to be more careful about what you do.
Yeah, don't get caught up in the moment, because it's exciting when you see something you want and you have the money to buy it. Kids and adults for that matter get excited, and then we get buyer's remorse. The goal of this, Hannah, is to not rescue our children from buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
Where
there was nothing wrong with the styrofoam airplane. It's just it wasn't sturdy.
No, he had the money to buy it. It came from the right account. Everything was right. But he probably shouldn't have bought it. But we want him to learn that. We wanted him to learn that lesson. That's a really good lesson.
It was his money.
Yep.
And similarly, I had a 9-year-old daughter who wanted to buy herself a watch. And her sister had a watch. She wanted a watch. And so I was there at the store. She spent a half hour picking out the watch that she liked the best. And after a week, she's like, nah, I think I want to go get a different one. And it's like, you open, there was nothing wrong with the watch. It's just she changed her mind. She wanted to try another watch. And I'm like, that's not honest to, take it back to the store, because they have to repackage it, restock it, or throw it away. I don't know what they do with it when you return something like that. And so I'm like, no, that's not honest.
Not a good reason to return something.
You need to do your shopping. You need to make up your mind before you buy something.
Yeah, she needs to be better at shopping.
Yeah.
We're not saying that you shouldn't let your kids, to try things out and because that's true, Hannah. Maybe you don't know. Maybe there's not enough information at the time of the purchase. So you do purchase something, take it home, play around with it, figure out, oh, this doesn't do what I thought. Then it's appropriate to take it back.
Yeah.
But just buying something because you felt like it, playing with it for a week, and then returning it because you were done playing, not okay.
Yeah, well, in contrast, I took my teenage daughter swimsuit shopping, and she bought a $40 swimsuit at a store, and within 3 weeks of her wearing it, all the sewing started coming undone. And the whole thing fell apart. It was so poorly constructed.
It was a poor quality swimsuit.
It was defective. She had just worn it a couple of times to her swim practice, and it had just fallen apart. The material had faded, fallen apart. It was the sewing was coming undone, and it wasn't honest. It wasn't an honest
from the company.
From the company, yeah. They were selling something that was poor quality that should have at least lasted the summer, and instead it fell apart within 3 weeks. And so yes, I had her take it back, but it wasn't her going, I've actually, I've worn this swimsuit for 2 weeks. I'd like to have a different swimsuit that I try and wear for 2 weeks. And that wouldn't be honest to take it back at that point.
And we've heard stories. We used to shop at Costco. And they had I think it was a lifetime return policy or some really good return policy at Costco, where basically you could return something forever if you ever, for whatever reason. And it turned out that some people were being dishonest. They'd buy a TV, use it for a couple of years, and return it to Costco to get the new latest and greatest. And Costco...
And they thought they were... people who do that think they're being so clever.
And in fact, it's just dishonest.
And it's just dishonest, and then it ruins it for everybody else.
So Costco had to change their policy, their return policy for electronics, where I think it was 90 days at the time, where it was no longer a lifetime warranty, essentially. It was reduced to 90 days, which, it's just, like you said, it kind of ruins it for everybody. And when you think you're being clever, and in reality, you're just being dishonest.
Yeah. So teach your kids to be honest in how they shop, treat the person selling it, whoever that may be, how they would want to be treated if they were the seller.
And, and like we said, don't rescue your kids from poor purchases, like going back to the Falcon buying the toy plane that promptly disintegrated despite us warning him that it would. There was the story of Benjamin Franklin where he bought the whistle, and I think everyone knows this story where, he bought a whistle because he was so excited about buying a whistle, and he paid way too much money for it. And he got home and he was showing it off to his siblings, and they're like, "Oh, that's really cool. Great whistle. How much did you pay for it?" And he told them, and they were all like, "What?"
They just all started laughing. He was like, what, the youngest of like 13 children
something
or something
like that.
17 or something like that.
And as the story goes, his satisfaction was cut short when his brothers and sisters, finding out how much he had paid for it, informed that he had forked over 4 times as much money as it was worth. To which Benjamin Franklin said, "The reflection gave me more chagrin than the whistle gave me pleasure." So, but I think it's interesting, he learned a great lesson that day, but also I noticed his parents didn't go march over and take that whistle and demand he get his money back. His parents let it ride. Where he had made a poor decision with his money, he needed to own the consequences of it, and he did. He learned a valuable lesson that day, and can anyone argue that Benjamin Franklin was not good with money after that? I mean, he was remarkably good. Matter of fact, he's so good, his face is on the $100 bill.
He'd be proud of that.
Okay, so that's number 3. What to do when money goes is misappropriated or misspent. Number 4, what to do if kids lose track of their money. And this will happen, if they just didn't enter in their receipt or they forgot they bought something.
Or maybe, they didn't have a phone with them, right. And when they got home, they forgot.
Yeah.
So,
So what happens? And the solution for this one is very similar to the previous one, and that is hold regular payday. Because what will happen is if you hold regular payday, it'll show up that their cash that they have in their envelope or their plastic bag does not match what the app shows. And you can be like, wait a minute, you're off by $13.23. What did you buy this week? And the kid will go, oh, I forgot to put in that I bought a swim cap. And you're like, okay, well, let's enter that in. You take care of it. If it's only been a week since the last payday, you'll catch it. And it's easy for the kid to remember. But if it's been like 2 months since you've had payday, it's a lot harder for them to remember, $13.23. That could have been one thing. It could have been 3 things. Like, who knows?
Did somebody steal my money?
Yeah.
They won't know.
Holding regular payday takes care of this problem pretty easily. And the thing is, though, is that holding payday, it keeps people motivated because it's rewarding, but it also makes dealing with cash way easier. So kind of the overarching principle that one of the major solutions to dealing with cash that we're kind of harping on here is to hold payday.
There are many benefits for holding payday regularly because
right.
That's the time you go over your goals and
you review spending, you reconcile cash accounts, you get mastery.
Yeah, it keeps people focused and working on their goals and on their chores and everything. So there are many benefits to holding regular payday. This is just one of them, but it's an important one. So when you're dealing with cash, you have to regularly pay attention, reconcile your accounts.
Okay, right.
But when you're dealing with let's say a credit card or a debit card, you don't have to do it. The bank makes the whole list of what you took,
right.
What you spent, and so you start going, well, why do I need to look at that? Why do I need to reconcile that? What's the point? The bank, does this for me, and so what I've noticed is because of the easiness of that, a lot of people don't look at their finances on a regular basis.
Because they don't have to.
But
if you're dealing with cash.
Yeah, but they run into a lot of problems because that. I just read an article this last week about how people will have multiple credit cards, debit cards, and they've signed up for subscriptions to things. And they don't realize they have hundreds and hundreds of dollars per month of fees in just like random subscriptions.
Right.
And so they actually like are unaware of where their money's going and stuff. So there's
And they lose a lot of money. They lose tons of money because of it.
Yeah. So even though they have a credit card or a debit card, they should be looking at their money regularly. We've also had fraud on our accounts where if we hadn't caught it within that month, we would have lost thousands of dollars.
Yep.
And so cash forces you basically to look at your finances more frequently. And that's actually a habit you want to be in even if you switch over to debit cards and credit cards.
Yep. So that by the time the kids do leave home and they do get that debit card and they do get that credit card, they're already in the habit of checking every week how they're doing and making sure things match up and going. And that's the other thing, Hannah, when you're going, if you rely on your monthly statement from the bank, it's true. They keep track of all that stuff, but maybe what's on there on the statement doesn't reflect what you remember buying. And it's like, oh, here's a charge for $18. And you're like, oh, generic merchandise. What did I buy? I don't remember what I bought. And if you don't update that on a regular basis, you could have all these charges that you're like, I don't know what I spent my money on. I know I spent it, but you don't know what. And it's harder to track and to change.
Yeah, that was a lot of families that we met with when we were setting up Moneypants. That's actually a problem we ran into, which is why we made Moneypants the way we made it, is many adults have no idea how much money they spend on what, because they don't do their finances.
Oh, no, remember?
And so that's why we had to create a way to go, okay, this is how much you spend on your kids. And so we had to figure it out for them because, so many people, that is how they do their finances. They don't. They just...
At the time, I remember this, where I think we were spending like $300 a month or $300 a week on food. Mm-hmm. And we told somebody that, and we're like, so that's what our family spends. What do you spend? And they were like, $300 a week. Whoa, I never spend that much money. We're like, oh, really? Okay, well, let's break it down. And we broke down their grocery shopping, and they were like, oh, well, I guess I spent $150 on that trip and $100 on that trip. We're like, okay, so you spent $250 on groceries this week. What about eating out? And they're like,
oh, that counts as groceries?
Oh, well, yeah, it does. And then what about your kids' lunch and then the snack foods that you bought and then the impulse purchases when you were going through checkout? And after we added it all up, it was closer to $500. And they were shocked how much money they were spending on food. They had no idea that they were spending that much money on food. But if they had been doing this, weekly
accounting.
That's
happened more than once,
yes,
where people are like,
several times.
How are you spending that much money on food? And you're like, okay, you know what? I keep track of it, and I know you don't.
But not only that, which is funny because we have a much larger family than most of the people we work with. Mm-hmm. And we actually spend less than a lot of people because we're so frugal, but also because they have no clue. And it's so easy to spend if it's just numbers on a screen. But as soon as it's cash, and I know this isn't the Power of Cold Hard Cash podcast, but if it's cash, you're a lot more careful. So, all right, so that's number 4. How to deal with losing track of money. Hold payday. Just hold payday. Here's number 5, the 5th hurdle to overcome when dealing with cash, and that is shady business deals. And here's the thing, as soon as kids get money, they want to do a deal. They want to, I don't know, it's just so much fun. You have cash, you have money, even if it's pennies, they want to be trading pennies. All of a sudden,
the entrepreneurs.
It's really cool. I love it. It's really fun to watch. But now that they're buying their own stuff, they realize they have other stuff that they want to sell. I remember in 4th grade where we were studying the gold rush. And so the teacher went out and painted a bunch of rocks gold and spread them throughout the playground. And during recess, the kids would go out and hunt for gold. It was the gold rush. And they'd come back to class and we had this whole thing going on where we had elected judges and we had sheriffs and people enforcing the law. And then kids would bring stuff from home to sell for these little gold nuggets. The actual things they would bring to school to sell for these gold nuggets that they would trade. It was a whole ecosystem, marketplace going on here. And because as soon as money was involved, the kid, like you said, Anna, the entrepreneurial spirit kind of overtook my 4th grade class. And I think most kids are no different, where as soon as you start paying them money, they want to make deals. They want to sell stuff. They want to buy stuff. They want to get rid of stuff that they had. It's just fun and exciting. And like our kids during the lockdown, when there was no school, there were no sports, they had nothing to do. So they created, they called it the city game, where, and they would make like stuff out of,
I don't know. They would weave baskets out of grass and I don't
and they make
know,
little clay figurines, and they had like metal shaving piece pottery, whatever. And in my mind, it was garbage, but to them, it was like, oh, these little treasures, these trinkets, these things, and they started selling them back and forth to each other and spending and actual cash money. And we caught wind of it, and we're like, no, that. You can't be selling your siblings garbage or other things that we've also seen in the past where shady business deals where one kid will say, hey, I'll pay you a quarter if you do my job. Okay, that's not what we're about. Or how about this one? I'll pay you $1 if you don't tell mom and dad. Yeah, these all qualify as shady business deals. So the solution is pretty simple, and that is the mom and dad oversee all money transactions between siblings.
Yeah, and if you do a money transaction and it's not in front of us, it's null and void.
Null and void. Correct.
Yeah, it does not stand. Oh, but they said nope, you did not do it in front of us.
But she sold me that for $1, and I wrote my name on a blah blah blah.
Give her her money back. You are not, you're not supposed to do that, and you know it. And so that prevents a lot of fights. So they can still be entrepreneurs. My daughter can say, hey, look, I have this old pair of high heels. I took really good care of them. I bought them for $10. I'd be willing to sell them to you for $5. And they'll bring it to me, say, Mom, we want to make a business deal. I'm going to sell her these for $5. Is that fair? Is that okay? And she's like, I'm like, you want to buy those? Yep. Okay, sure. And that's all. They just have to do it in front of me. Well, and, because every once in a while I'll be like, oh, well, I bought this for $2 and it was 2 years later, they're falling apart. The shoe doesn't even have a strap or shoelaces and they want to sell it for the same price or more than they bought it. I'm like, no, you're taking advantage of.
But they think they're being clever.
Yeah, you're taking advantage of your little brother. That's not fair business. That's not a fair price.
These are my football cleats. I realize that this half is missing, but I'll sell them to you for $3. And like, no, you can't do that.
So it just prevents so many fights and problems. Just having that little rule of, hey, if you want to do a business deal with your any cash transactions, money transactions between siblings has to be done in front of mom and dad.
But it's such a great teaching opportunity because you're able to, when these transactions, these deals go in front of mom and dad, it gives mom and dad the opportunity to teach the kids what is fair and equitable. Where Johnny may think, oh, I got a great deal. I sold my younger brother the old torn cleats for $5. Good for me. Well, he didn't look at it from his brother's perspective that basically took advantage of his brother. So it's a teaching moment. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And so you can say, Johnny, I appreciate that you want to sell these, but what you're asking is not a fair price and what you're selling is not an okay product. So it's a teaching moment. But like you said, Hannah, it also helps avoid fights. But when mom and dad oversee these transactions, it also helps establish ownership, where especially when it comes to girls and clothing, we haven't had as much of a problem with the boys, but it would prevent problems with boys too. But the girls, they'll sell each other, a top or some shoes or some pants or something like that. And when mom and dad are there, we go, okay, these whatever leggings are they're no longer your superstar. They belong to Sassy, and we'll have Sassy write her name on it. And there it's all above board. And there's no confusion who they belong to in the future. And again, preventing fights.
It prevents so many fights.
But it also prevents the person from buyer's remorse, where we'll say, okay, Sassy, are you sure you want to buy those for $5? Oh yeah, I love them. They're the best. I love the pink, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Superstar, you can sell those to Sassy. Sassy, hand over your money. Sassy hands over the money. We watch it. She marks it in the app. And then 2 hours later, Sassy goes, oh, no, I don't want these anymore. I didn't really go. Nope. we already went through this. We went through all the steps. You those belong to you. I'm sorry that now you realize that you had bought something else. It's too late. So it prevents that problem as well. And it helps just keep people and keep children, and helps them teach them to be honest and to be careful with their money and the deals that they make. So that's number 5 is how to deal with this hurdle of potential shady deals.
So having the kids deal with cash in this way, we found that when the kids move out of the house, they are able to handle their debit cards, credit cards, bank accounts, investment accounts. They're able to handle those things very well. And
Surprisingly
they're very
well.
well prepared. They understand, to avoid debt. They understand how to manage their finances for the most part. That's not to say there won't be an exception or whatever, but they are very well prepared to take the next step of having their own bank account and
They're the
whatnot.
most likely to succeed.
Yeah, they're most likely to succeed. It doesn't mean they will, but they're most likely to succeed. But we have run into a couple of problems. We're going to share those, and I'm sure we'll run into more, but we're going to share a couple of problems that we have run into. One was we did have an adult child get scammed with cash, where we hadn't taught the child when to not use cash.
Right. Well, it's one of these, my one child, they are out of the house. They don't live here at home anymore. They're an adult. They're technically an adult now. They're on their own. And two guys pulled up in a truck or a van or something and said, "Hey, we're working on this construction project, and the super rich owner doesn't want this projector anymore. They're swapping it out with another one. And so, we're just going to take it to the dump. Do you want it? We'll give it to you for like $800. And this child of mine goes, "Oh, that's a really good deal." And they looked it up on their phone and looked at the website, and it said it was a good deal. He's like, "Oh," and so they were like, "Okay, I'll buy it." And this child of mine handed over the cash, and these two dudes in the truck, drove off. And fast forward, my child decided, you know what? It's not as great a deal as I thought it was. I'll just sell it on eBay, only to find out it was a scam product. It wasn't a quality product. It wasn't a legitimate projector that was worth $5,000. It wasn't a high-end anything. It was just two dudes in a truck. And it was a pretty elaborate scam. They had a whole website set up, and the packaging was really good. But because my child had used cash, they had no recourse. And that would have been a great deterrent, where if they had used a credit card or a debit card.
No, credit card mostly.
Well, credit card. They would, first of all, the people wouldn't be able to accept it. And so it would have put the kibosh on the deal right there, where, I only have debit. So can you accept debit card? And the guys would be like, in the truck would be like, "Oh, no, we can only do cash." "Oh, well, sorry." Because that's a red flag. If someone only accepts cash, probably not a legitimate product.
So the point of this story is if you are, teaching your kids on a cash-based system, when they do transfer over into adulthood, you do need to explain that, okay, when you make a major purchase, you do not want to make that with cash, because then you lose all recourse.
Yeah, we're huge proponents of the credit card, where you have purchase protection.
Yeah.
And we highly recommend, once the kids leave home and they've established that
and
they know how
they've learned discipline.
Yeah, they've established they know how to use cash properly. A credit card's a great boon, because you got points and all sorts of purchase protection.
There's a time and a place to use a credit card.
Right.
And so for major purchases, where if the product is bad, you want to make sure that you have a way to return it in that situation. Right. And so that actually keeps the sellers honest and protects you from scams. So that is one issue that you want to pay attention to.
The only other thing that we ran into was our one of our daughters showed up with a counterfeit $20 bill. And it was really good. And I don't know where it came from. I'm wondering if it was changed from the store, or if we got it when we withdrew cash from the bank. I'm not sure.
I was impressed that our daughter figured out that it was counterfeit.
It was so good. Yeah. The only way you could tell is if it didn't have the watermark. But even the gold-plated printing and the just everything about it, the paper, the way it felt, everything, it was really, really good. And she determined, wait a minute, it's not, it was just off, just ever so slightly. And you had to really kind of study it before you determine which one it was out of their $20 bills. So, and I don't know what to do about that, but that is a problem with dealing with cash, is counterfeit. But I think the benefits greatly outweigh any of these potential problems and any of the hurdles that we've talked about. The benefits of cash, and we talk about it extensively in The Power of Cold Hard Cash. That podcast, we talk about it extensively, but the basic is, cash works really well when it comes to teaching the value of things in the economy of labor. And that's part of the problem too, and like I said, I want to kind of wrap this up, but I wanted to talk briefly on these new apps that we've seen, these allowance apps and these chore apps where they have this digital currency. And Hannah, we tried, and let me back up. The idea is great because you want to set it and forget it. You want to set spending limits for your kids. You want to have an automatic transfer every week or every month.
And you could set it so, hey, you only can make these purchases here and here and here.
At these different stores, yep.
And it sounds really great. And we were like, hey, we've got this Moneypants product. There's no other app that does what our app does. And let's do digital money.
And we
that would solve so many problems. You wouldn't have to worry about their money getting stolen. You wouldn't have to worry about it getting misspent. You wouldn't have to worry about any of these things that we mentioned in the podcast today. And we tried digital money for 2 years. And if you want to know what happened, you got to listen to the podcast, The Power of Hard Cold Cash. But we'll give you the summary of what happened. It did not work. It did not work. It did not produce the results that we get with when we use cash.
Yeah. Cash is king.
So
it works.
You can find out because maybe you're thinking, Moneypants is nice, but what if I took Moneypants and I the concept and I use it with one of these digital things? If that's what you're thinking, go listen to The Power of Hard Cold Cash and find out why you don't want to do that. And consider that before you make that decision, because that was something we really wanted, and we really, really, really wanted it, and
we wanted it to work,
and we determined no. And so that podcast explains why.
And all the psychology and all the studies and everything that goes into why cash works so much better.
But our podcast today, it was focused on, hey, here are the problems you will run into if you're dealing with cash. Here's how to avoid them. And, we can sum up the solutions into 3 things.
Well, no. Let's just talk. Here's what we talked about. The 5 hurdles were, lost money or lost cash, stolen cash, misspent cash, lost track of cash, or shady business deals dealing with cash.
Okay, and there were 3 solutions. Rule number 1: keep everyone's money in a family safe. Put it in labeled plastic baggies. Label it with their name. Okay, so rule number 1: keep everybody's money in a family safe in the bags. Rule number 2: hold payday regularly and review the cash. Make sure what's on the app matches what's in the bag. Rule number 3: all business money deals have to be in front of mom and dad.
Yeah.
So
those 3 rules. If you follow those 3 rules, you won't have any problems.
Family safe, regular payday, reviewing cash, and all business deals at home have to be in front of mom and dad. You follow that, you'll avoid most of the problems associated with dealing with cash.
And that's it. Those are all of our thoughts on how to deal with and overcome the 5 hurdles of dealing with cash, because cash really does work and it's very effective. If you like what you hear in this podcast, please tell your friends. They may want to listen too. We may share a solution to a problem they are currently facing. And if you have a suggestion for a future podcast, please go to our website under support and click Contact Us. Send us an email and we'll get right on it. And that's it for today. Enjoy our mystery guest composition. We'll see you next time.
Power Hour. Ooh, that sounds fun. Moneypants. That's what I'm talking about now.
Talk about
Cash.
what? Cash?
Money.
Yeah, money. I like money.
It's time for you.
For me, I'm so excited.
Money pants.
Hey, give me some money pants.
Yeah, money pants.
I want money pants.
Every day. All I want is more money pants.
Me too.
Money pants.
Hey, give me some money pants.
Yeah.
I want money pants.
Money pants.
Money pants, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
Money pants.